So, welcome to the BBL Week 2. I apologize for this video being a bit late. I had vacation and you know how that goes. So this video will be going up right around the time Week 3 is up. So if you haven't seen it yet, go ahead and watch it as well. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and get into this team. This week we're against Burigo in the Interatlantic PC. He's currently 0-1 with a -5 differential, and we are 1-0 with a +1 differential. So even though we are ahead right now, Burigo's team looks amazing, so I expect him to do great things as this season progresses. But looking at his team, he has 3 major components. He has his huge heavy hitters in his top 3, the Crocodile and the Porygon Z. He has a lot of bulk and pivoting options in things like Zapdos, Ferrothorn, and Jellicent, and then he has a Kricketune with Sticky Web. So I decided the best way to prep for his team was to mainly worry about pivoting and outspeeding the majority of his team, wearing down his walls, and then setting up Solgaleo to win the late game. And if Solgaleo couldn't do it, then either Ash Greninja or Mismagius could. So as far as predictions go, I really did expect him to bring the top 3 on his team because Tapu Lele is a huge threat. Naganadel can easily sweep a team with Nasty Plot, and my team really doesn't have much for a Naganadel that's either Nasty Plot or Choice Scarf. And then Mega Gallade is just really threatening because it can take any non-boosted hits from my Greninja and then knock out most of my team in either 1 or 2 hits. So all in all, going into this team, I'm really happy that I dropped Gothorita, Tropius, and Drampa because it allowed me to pick up Mismagius, who looks really good in this battle with a Choice Scarf because it's able to outspeed his entire team. I prepped it to actually outspeed up to a Choice Scarfed Crocodile because I know that's a fairly common bring with Crocodile. And even if he was max speed, I would still be able to outspeed it. Shadow Ball doesn't do very much to Crocodile, but it does hurt most of the rest of his team. I have Mystical Fire if I predict a Ferrothorn switch in, and it also does a lot to Kricketune, as well as lowering the special attacks of anything that might want to switch in, such as Tapu Lele or even something like Zapdos. And then Dazzling Gleam was just mainly to catch the Crocodile. I also had Trick in case I wanted to get rid of my Choice Scarf. If he had a lot of Mons left and I was running low, then I could get rid of my Scarf and be able to switch up moves and potentially still win if we had the right tools in our disposal to finish the game later on if we weakened him in the right places. The second mon I decided to bring was Icium Greninja. It is max speed because of the Naganadel. And we have Icium Z Ice Beam to nuke either the Zapdos or the Crocodile and do a lot of damage to the rest of his team. We have Gunk Shot to hit the Tapu Lele and the Aromatisse. We have Dark Pulse as, good general stab. And then we have U-Turn for a good pivoting option. Like I said, that was our main priority, was to pivot around until we could win with something like Solgaleo. Rotom Heat is fairly basic. It's pretty much our only bulk as far as things that can take hits reliably from most of his defensive core, as well as some of his offensive threats go. We have Dual Stab in Volt Switch, more pivoting, Overheat that does a lot of damage, and then we have Hidden Power Ice because I feel like if I pivot enough times with Volt Switch, he'll try to get cheeky and go into something like the Crocodile on my Volt Switch. And overheating on Crocodile would actually leave me in a rather bad position. So I thought it would be good to have Hidden Power Ice to catch the switch, and then Defog because honestly I wanted more moves on Fortress this time. Fortress is pretty basic. It's there to set up rocks, Volt Switch, and Toxic the Zapdos on switch in. Gyro Ball also does a decent amount to Tapu Lele and Naganadel, and can also weaken the Gallade, and we have Rocky Helmet to switch into mons like Gallade and Crocodile to force them to take some chip damage. I really like our Solgaleo set this week. It is Calm Mind, Morning Sun, with 2 moves. I knew I wanted Flash Cannon, and then my other move, I was really split between Flamethrower and Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt really helped against the Jellicent and was good general coverage for most of his team, while Flamethrower helped us hit the Ferrothorn while we would be walled by the Jellicent. So I had to decide whether I thought he was bringing Ferrothorn or Jellicent, and I thought we had enough answers for the Ferrothorn as well as needing the coverage for the Jellicent because it could potentially weaken us enough even with Calm Minds through super effective stab and a potential burn. And then the last mon I decided to bring was the Mega Venusaur this week. It's very similar to last week. Hidden Power Fire for the Ferrothorn. We have Substitute to set up on the Ferrothorn so that we can get a free hit on his switch ends. And then other than that, we just had a general bulky Venusaur. So as far as the mons I decided not to bring this week, I thought Sun really didn't make much sense. So I left Torkoal, Healerless, and Sawsbuck out. They just couldn't do enough damage on their own. Landorus was outsped by most of his team, and I really considered him having ice coverage on at least a couple of his faster mons to help deal with the Landorus. So I thought it was best to leave it out. And then Azumarill didn't really do that well because a lot of his top threats had electric coverage and could just overpower me, and Aqua just didn't look that good. So anyway, I'm curious to see what he brought, so let's go ahead and get into the battle. Welcome to the battle. Looking at Burigo's team, we do see that he didn't bring the Tapu Lele. This is so exciting because it did so much work against my team, and it not being here means that Miss Magius and Greninja have a lot less pressure on them to stay alive, and we can trust more on Solgaleo being our late game win condition. We also noticed he didn't bring Kricketune for his webs, as well as no Jellicent, which means that Flamethrower would have been better on Solgaleo in retrospect, but I'm still happy that I put Thunderbolt on it just in case he had brought Jellicent. But looking at his team, I do realize that Greninja is my best lead. If he decided to lead Crocodile or Zapdos, then I would be able to just nuke them with Ice Z turn 1. And otherwise I would be able to U-turn out for momentum or hard switch in Ferrothorn's case. So let's see what he decided to lead with. I do feel really good about Solgaleo setting up late game if we can break through his team fast enough. And this battle did end up being something like 50 turns, so if I do get some of the commentary wrong, I do apologize. So I do lead Greninja into his Mega Gallade, and this is a free U-turn. So he switches out turn 1, goes into his Aromatisse. I decided to U-turn and get the initiative early on, and I considered here for quite a while what I should go into, but I thought going into going into Fortress and seeing what his switch in would be the best idea. So I did go for a Toxic here, predicting him to either switch or stay in with Aromatisse. And a Toxic on the Zapdos is huge because it's a very annoying threat to my team. And then I decided to go ahead and switch out, predicting the Heat Wave. Go to my Rotom that can take any hit from Zapdos, and he does just go for the safe Heat Wave. So the first turn, I figured he wouldn't go into Crocodile, maybe thinking I might predict, go for an HP Ice or something. So I did just go for a Volt Switch here to try to maintain momentum. He does switch out here, and he goes back into his Aromatisse, which can easily soak up hits, but I didn't really see what offensively it could do to Rotom, but maybe it wanted to go for Toxic. So I thought it was easy enough just to go right back into Fortress. I thought he might want to go and double back into Zapdos, so I did just go for the Volt Switch this time. That way I could maintain momentum, not have to hard switch again, and worry about any predictions and doubles he might want to make. So this time I'm in on Rotom, didn't take any damage, and I get even more leftovers back, bringing me back pretty much to full. And we did have to recreate this battle a couple times, but we'll worry about that later on in the video where it matters. So this time he does switch into Crocodile, and I actually predicted and went for the Hidden Power Ice, got a huge like 35% off, which means that later on we don't have to worry about any potential rolls if this is bulky Crook. But I switch into Fortress here, and he actually goes for Fire Fang and predicts me. He does take a lot of Rocky Helmet damage, but we do have to switch Fortress back out because the roll is in his favor to knock us out. And he does go for another Fire Fang, which kind of makes me think that he might be locked in, maybe Scarf, because that definitely wasn't boosting item damage like Band. And then he goes for Fire Fang a third time, which tells me this is pretty much guaranteed Scarf. So I know Rotom can stay in here. I can keep spamming Volt Switch until he does switch out because he's doing almost no damage to me. So he does eventually bring in Zapdos. I get a Volt Switch off, and I know I'll get Toxic damage on him. So I do decide to bring in Greninja here, because I know that an Ice Beam can kill it from this range, and I can have the ICMZ if he does decide to bring in something else next turn and pretty much kill anything. He does bring in his Ferrothorn here, and this Ice Beam initially told me that he was Assault Vest because there was no way it was doing that little to him. But later on I figured out that in my calcs I was actually calcing for Protean Greninja, so that was a mistake on my part that actually costed me a lot right there, because later on in the game I thought I would do more damage. But anyway, he gets up his Stealth Rocks. I go into Venusaur and decide to go ahead and get my Mega up, and then I go for a Substitute because there's nothing Ferrothorn can really do to break through it, because I didn't run a lot of speed this week, so Gyro Ball wouldn't even be able to break it. So he slowly gets whittled down by Toxic. I know the first turn he comes in it does net no damage, but I decided to stay in, see what he wanted to do. He gets a Heat Wave crit here, and in the original battle he didn't get a crit and Heat Wave didn't break the sub, so he had to kind of move around these next few turns a little differently than we did in the actual battle. We disconnected about, I don't know, 30 turns in, and the first time we recreated it, I actually got a lucky sludge bomb poison. So the second time I had to use hidden power ices instead, or hidden power fires instead, I mean. So the rest of this battle goes on with him healing. He stayed at about the same amount of health, and I got my substitute up, but I believe he goes for, yeah, a second roost here so that I could be at the right amount of health once he switched his Zapdos out. So I go for a sludge bomb. It knocks him down to about 65%, and he takes a little more toxic damage. And here I'm just trying to get as much health back as possible. He still hasn't broken through my sub, so I'm not really sure what he wants to do here. And he decides to switch into his Naganadel on my sludge bomb. And even though it is resisted, it does do about 30%. And since I'm behind the sub, I know that I can get a free either attack or leech seed off. He does go for Dragon Pulse here. In the original battle, he went for, I believe, a Sludge Bomb, or a Flamethrower actually, because it did break the sub after the Zapdos' Heat Wave. So that just showed us an extra move. I also showed Hidden Power against him, so it was kind of even. We both showed off some of our sets that we wouldn't have seen otherwise. So here he goes into Gallade on my substitute. That was a really good play on his part. But I do have the opportunity to get a Leech Seed off here and kind of help whittle him down. But I decided instead to go for Hidden Powers, because in the original battle I went for Sludge Bomb, and 2 Hidden Powers does about the same damage as 1 Sludge Bomb. He goes for Zen Headbutt at +2, easily breaks the substitute, would OHKO me. I get the extra damage off that I knew I needed to, and then I switched into Fortress. It was a pretty safe sack. There was no real reason to keep it at this point, and he does make the smart play. Goes for Drain Punch, gets most of his health back so that Rocky Helmet really didn't even do enough to cover for the health he gained. Going to Greninja here, my calcs told me that this IZ was almost guaranteed to kill even if he had some bulk investment. But like I said earlier, I was calcing for Protean for some reason. I don't know why the calc decided to home in on that, so it was giving me the boosted damage. So you'll see that the IZ does not knock him out. He Drain Punches and gets a lot of the health back that he would have had otherwise. This was a misplay on my part to let Greninja go down like that. So I had to bring in Mismagius, and what I really should have done is go to Mismagius first, because even if Mismagius didn't kill with the Shadow Ball, it was kind of a roll, depending on how much bulk he had, then it would have been better because he couldn't have Drain Punch and gotten health back, and he would have been in a worse situation against my Greninja. But anyway, I did just go for the safe Shadow Ball. His Ferrothorn eats it fairly well, and then I went into Rotom because Ferrothorn can't really do anything to this Rotom. He does make a smart play into his Gallade, sets up a Swords Dance, and I just decided to Volt Switch because I didn't mind if he had killed Rotom. It didn't really look like in the calcs he would be able to knock me out. But then I could just go into Mismagius. I didn't think he would have Shadow Sneak. I really was banking on him not having Shadow Sneak at this point. So I did just go for Shadow Ball. And knowing that this is Scarf Crook, I thought he would want to stay in. So I went for another Shadow Ball and get the knockout. That was such a crucial play to get rid of that Choice Scarf Crocodile, because we went on a lot of this game at very high amounts of Pokemon. And I thought it would end up going to timer just because of how long it was taking us each to make moves. But this is the moment I decided maybe I could go into Solgaleo and start setting up. So he switches out. Aromatisse can't touch Solgaleo, and he goes into his Ferrothorn, and I go for Calm Mind. And I think there's not really a lot this Ferrothorn can do. It can Thunder Wave me. Maybe it can do something like knock off, but I really did want to keep my leftovers for later, and I thought it was better if I held on to Solgaleo as long as possible. So I did go into Rotom here, and I decided to scare him out. I knew he wouldn't want to stay in on Rotom because Ferrothorn is one of his primary defensive cores to check a lot of the Mons I have left. So I did go for the Defog here to stop Rock's damage and actually allow myself to have one more Rotom switch in later on, because if you can see by my health, I don't have leftovers, I don't have any way to heal, and I'm actually below 25%. So he does go for a Roost here, which is a really smart play because that means my Volt Switch did half as much damage to him, and the toxic damage still isn't very high yet. And I did decide to go into my Venusaur here, kind of to help stall this Zapdos down. I really didn't have much of a choice here. I was running out of tools to use to weaken him. So I thought it was best if I could just do as much damage as I could with Venusaur, use my last 2 Mons as backup win cons, which was my Mismagius and my almost dead Rotom, to have as either a sack or to have to clean up the game later. and just find the perfect time to set up Solgaleo. So that was my plan at this point, was just to set up. He does let his Zapdos go down here as I get behind a free sub, but I am burned and I will go down in one hit here. So he brings his Ferrothorn in here, and this was an interesting play. So Hidden Power Fire would have knocked him very low, but I predicted him to want to switch out into either Gallade or Aromatisse or anything predicting my Hidden Power Fire, because he already knew I had it. So I wanted to get the lead sheet up so I could get some extra recovery on my Solgaleo had he switched. He decided to just stay in and let me potentially Hidden Power Fire him. It probably wouldn't have knocked him out, but it would have done a lot of damage, which I thought was very interesting. And then he sets up his Stealth Rock, so that means my Rotom can't switch in again. So right here, I lose Venusaur behind a substitute. All I have left is Solgaleo at full health. I have a Scarf Mismagius, and I have a Rotom that's essentially dead. And it's just one sacrifice to if, say, he brought his Gallade back in. So here I decided to go for a Calm Mind, gauge the damage this knockoff does. It does about 35%. So this is going to get really stally, because all I could think to do was just spam Calm Mind into Morning Sun and Calm Mind into Morning Sun. So I get to +2 here, and my idea is to set up so that I can survive a hit from Mega Gallade into a Flamethrower from Naganadel. And that means I need to be at about +5 special defense. So I thought right here he would predict me to a Morning Sun again and try to switch and make an offensive play that would have lost me the game. So I went for the safe Flash Cannon because it wouldn't kill the Ferrothorn, which is what I had to set up on. And then I could Morning Sun the next turn and still get all of my health back. So for the rest of these next few turns, I'm just setting up Calm Minds. I'm giving myself the best opportunity possible to win this game with Solgaleo, because I know that his Gallade is doing something like 35 to 40%, and his Naganadel, unless it crits, is not doing more than 30%. And then the Ferrothorn's knockoff, because I can't heal and then not take a hit, would knock me down about 30%. So I was just giving myself the best possible odds to live any two moves from the Naganadel plus the Gallade, not counting a crit. If he gets a crit with Naganadel, then I guarantee lose Solgaleo, and it all rests on Mismagius's back. And that would be very hard because he would have something like Naganadel and Aromatisse, so I couldn't let myself into a move because Aromatisse would just win, so I would have to trick away my Scarf. So he goes into Gallade, he goes for the Throat Chop. I expected a Drain Punch, and that did so much damage. I do knock him out with a Flash Cannon, but I'm sitting very low at 62 health. I did set up all those Calm Minds so that I could take this Flamethrower, and you can see it does 42. Had I not set up that many Calm Minds, I would have barely taken that, if I had taken it at all. Flash Cannon just wipes out both of them, and then he just has the Aromatisse left. Flash Cannon takes it out. Solgaleo with the clean 4-0 sweep at +5/+5. I really think the only thing he could have really done differently in that situation was switch into Gallade or switch into Naganadel at an earlier turn where I was at lower health, like maybe when I was going for a Calm Mind or something, and then try to do enough damage to me before I got my Calm Mind set up. So really, I think that was his biggest mistake. But even then, I did have the Mismagius in the back. I could have locked into something like Shadow Ball at first and knocked out either the Naganadel or the Gallade. When he brought in one of his bulkier mons, I could have brought in Rotom, sacked it to rocks, then brought it back in, tricked, and then tried to have won the slow game by taking the leftovers of one of his bulkier mons and mystical firing down their special attacks until I could kill them with Shadow Ball. So overall, this was a great game with Burigo. I really appreciate his patience in helping recreate the game when the internet randomly dropped. It was the internet on my side, but I really appreciate him. I think he's going to have a great season. He is 0-2 at this point, and we are 2-0, but I think he has a great chance to make a comeback, and hopefully we can stay on top. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next week.